Our next lesson is absolute value equations and inequalities. First, if I have the absolute value of 6, that means it's going to be a positive number. That's what absolute value stands for. And so then that number would be 6. So if I have the absolute value of negative 6, absolute value means distant, so that's why it's always positive. So it's going to be the positive number, which is 6. So if I'm solving for x and there's an absolute value sign, that means I could have a positive or negative number if you look above. So here, x would be equal to 6 or negative 6. Another way you can write this is positive or negative 6, because I have to make sure I have the positive and the negative answer. So when I'm dealing with problems with absolute value signs, I first always want to get the absolute value sign by itself. So I solve this like normal. So I'm going to subtract 2 from both sides of the equation. So it's absolute value of 7 of x is equal to 7. Once I have the absolute value sign, then I would have x is going to be equal to the positive answer, and x is going to be equal to the negative answer. And so x is already by itself, so that would be my answer. I want you to pause the video and attempt the second problem by yourself. You should have gotten n is equal to 3 or negative 3. You always need a positive and negative answer. Now here's a problem when there's more information than just x all by itself in the absolute value. You still do the same steps. My first step is still to get this absolute value sign by itself. So I'm going to add 5 to both sides of my equation. So now I have the absolute value of 3x minus 6 is going to be equal to negative 2. Now when I look at this problem, I already know that this is going to be a no solution. I want you to try to think about it. Why would this be a no solution? Do 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 do. You're right, because this answer should never be negative. You should never have an absolute value of anything to equal a negative number. So that's why this would be no solution. Okay, now I have to solve this, and there's a lot going on here. But again, the first thing you want to do is solve for this absolute value sign first. So you could rewrite the equation so it looks like this. So the absolute value sign is like my x right now. I'm going to first subtract 12 from both sides of my equation, and I get 3. Absolute value of 2z plus 9 is equal to. So then the answer here would be, again, no solution, because I have a negative 2 right here. Absolute value can't be negative 2, because even if I divide by 3, I would still get that an absolute value would be equal to negative 3, or negative 2/3, which is not possible. So when I look at this problem right here, I see my absolute value is not negative, but in order to solve my two solutions, I have to write a positive answer, so 3x minus 1 is equal to 8. And I also have to write a negative answer, because remember, when you have absolute value, it could equal a negative. And then I solve both of those separately. So add 1 to both sides, I get 3x is equal to 9. Add 1 to both sides, I get 3x is equal to negative 7. So x is going to be equal to 3, or x is going to be equal to negative 7/3. When you have absolute value, you should have 1 or 2 different answers. So now when I have an absolute value with an inequality sign, I want to look at my inequality sign, and that's going to tell me if it's going to be an and or an or statement. So if I look at my first problem, this says the absolute value of n minus 1 less than would be an and. N minus 1 absolute value is greater, so that would be an or statement. And you solve like normal. I would have n minus 1 is going to be less than 2, and n minus 1. When you write your negative answer, you have to flip the sign. So when I solve for both of these, if I add 1 to both sides, I have n less than 3 and n greater than negative 1. So it should be in between those two numbers. When I have my or statement, and again, you have to make sure you write your positive and negative. So the first positive, you just rewrite the problem, and then I'm going to write or, and I have n minus 1, I have to flip my sign, because it's like dividing by a negative 2. So I add 1 to both sides of my equation. So I have n is greater than 3, or n is less than negative 1. So when it's greater, it should point out, less than, it should point in. So in dealing with the absolute value, first you want to get the absolute value all by itself. In this case, it already is. Then you want to look at your absolute value sign. This is greater, so I'm going to put an or in between. And I'm going to write my positive answer, 8n is greater than or equal to 24, or, and then I write my negative answer, 8n is less than or equal to negative 24. Again, when you write your negative answer, you have to flip the sign. And then you solve for n. Right now I want you to pause the video and solve it by yourself. So you should have gotten negative 3 and 3, and make sure when you write this on your number line, the smaller number goes to the left. So at negative 3, it's a closed circle, and it's pointing to the left. And at 3, it's a closed circle, and it's pointing to the right, which that is why it's an or statement. I want you to fill out the Google form, submit, and have a great evening.